Good evening, Clarice.
I own a motel not too far from here, and you'd be welcome to spend the night in one of the empty rooms if you'd like.
It burns! Oh, it burns! And I'm the devil.
Here. Now here's the sac that contains the brain.
I would really like some wine.
That smells great.
Yes. Let's try no base.
I would really like some wine.
It is good.
All right. Just a little.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Necronomicast. My name is Wayne.
This is Zip.
This is Brian.
This is Doug.
And this is Paul Kulik.
Paul, you're our guest today.
I am, yeah. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks for being here. So, Corey, why don't you guys give a background? Because you guys have known each other for, I think, a long time, right? Quite a number of years.
Paul and I have been friends. My earliest memory of Paul was probably around first grade.
Yeah, maybe even before.
Mrs. Freed's class, for sure. Because I remember when Mrs. Freed had to separate us for talking and tormenting a girl named Christine in our class. Paul and I shared a history of sneaking in and just borrowing and stealing our way into horror movies before we turned 17 and going to haunted houses. And we even borrowed video cameras and made our own slasher films.
Really?
Back like in 8th grade. I'd ride my bike to his house, and he had this great wooded lot across the street from his house, and we'd dig graves. And
in the era before there were permits for everything, we tried to do little haunted houses or haunted yards.
Oh, I would love to hang out with you guys. I did all that stuff.
Movies, but backing up to first grade, one of the earliest memories I have of Brian was he used to do this impression of our first grade teacher, Mrs. Freed, or Miss Freed. Miss Freed? Was it Mrs. Freed? Mrs. Freed. And because she would always warn us not to lean back on our chairs, right? She would always say, "You're going to crack your head open
on the floor."
And so, he would always, Mrs. Freed, his arm outstretched,
like slow motion, like
you could see that just sort of falling backwards, cracking his head open. He'd always make this like poof motion with his hands to indicate that his head had cracked open like an egg. And Mrs. Freed.
The slow motion.
That was very...
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Did you make that into one of your movies?
No, our movies were...
never made it in.
No, our movies were about our bus driver in 8th grade who drove us home from Westside Middle School, and we imagined that he had an incestuous relationship with his mother.
It was inspired by... I suppose it was inspired by Psycho, right? I
mean, sure.
Yeah,
something like that.
Very literary.
Yeah.
Very literary.
And he would get so jealous when his mother, who was kind of the town pump, she would...
The what?
She'd have all these suitors come over, right? And he would get so enraged that his mom was cheating on him, and of course he would murder him wearing a hockey mask.
These are like 12-minute movies that we would film, and it would just be like this little vignette of...
A couple grisly murders, and of course he would die to be resurrected in the next movie.
Invariably.
Very nice.
Again, that was...
It's amazing how that happens.
What a great idea.
So weird. Fast forward, now we're in our 40s.
I think we wrote 7 or 8 of them. So
we only filmed 2.
We filmed 2.
Our budget ran out.
we were canceled, unfortunately.
And then we made an anthology comedy show after that still survives on DVD to this day.
It does survive, There's a copy
for that. Party.
Yeah. I'll charge admission for that one.
Okay.
So why in the hell do we have Paul on the show? That brings us to our topic of the day. We're going to be exploring the world of Hannibal Lecter. And Paul, fast forward from Mrs. Freed's first grade class.
It's come a long way.
Paul has established himself as one of the preeminent chefs in the Midwest. He's nationally recognized. He has established 2 phenomenal restaurants in Omaha, the Boiler Room and Le Bouillon. So we are using Paul's culinary and horror talents to good use tonight. We're going to be talking Hannibal Lecter, picking Paul's brain about how to best cook human meat, perhaps. We'll get into that. We'll talk about the history of the Thomas Harris novels. and the movies and
TV show and the
TV show for God's sake.
Series.
Yeah.
So pour yourself a nice glass of Chianti, not a wine glass. Get the Elwood Blues water glass, fill it up, get an assortment of cheeses, and let's dig into the show.
Let's do it.
We need to pop some corks right now.
Yeah,
you know that there's a footnote about that. That wasn't supposed to be Chianti because Chianti doesn't have a great reputation. I think initially that was supposed to be Amarone or something like that. It didn't sound as good, so it was an ad lib change of fava beans and Chianti.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's what we have on the show today. Right, it's gonna be good.
Is Chianti good anymore? I mean, do they make better
Chianti? There are a couple of really good producers, but generally speaking, it's the zone that's kind of like, I think a lot of people associate it with the fiasco, like that wicker basket thing. And unfortunately, it's never really managed to get out of the huge commercial, like the estates are huge, they're owned by people for vanity purposes more so than making great wine. So there are a couple of exceptions to that, but
let alone the fava bean industry.
The fava bean is suffering to this day.
Yeah, I know. They had a spike there back in the 90s.
That and the liver.
I think there was extra interest, liver, yes.
Strangely,
human liver and some fava.
We don't have any return addresses on but yeah. So Hannibal Lecter all started when, Brian?
Well, out of the dark imagination of Mr. Thomas Harris, he wrote a novel after Black Friday. That was his first book. Then he wrote a book, Red Dragon, that featured Hannibal Lecter kind of in a smaller role as kind of the antagonist to Will Graham, the FBI investigator. And of course, then that spawned the sequel, Silence of the Lambs. And then after that, the book Hannibal, which came out in 2001. And then 2006 or 7, he wrote his last book, Hannibal Rising, which kind of traced Hannibal's roots through Lithuania and post-war Germany and things like that. So Thomas Harris's books started it all, and the first movie came out in '86, Manhunter.
Oh yeah, and I had totally forgot about this movie.
I never knew about it.
Yeah, I was telling Paul that I was watching it, and I thought, I don't think I've seen this, but I'm almost certain I've seen all the '80s movies. Oh my god. And
every movie,
but I knew the story. I'm like, wait a minute, I remember this part. I totally remember the guy in the wheelchair scene, so I think I may have watched it back in '86, and then didn't really put it together until I remember seeing Red Dragon, but I must not have realized I watched Manhunter before, and I was very surprised with a lot of the actors. It was really fun to see. If you watch it now, its story still holds up. It's still a good movie,
I think so.
And I think it's maybe you guys can compare how they did with Red Dragon.
I think what's funny about Manhunter is I do remember back from that era because I was a super big Michael Mann fan. Like I got deep into like Miami Vice and I think that was about the same time, right? I think maybe just before then that Manhunter was
'86.
filmed.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's so there's a little bit of overlap, and then there's the movie Thief, and there's some other stuff, and L.A. Takedown, which is a TV movie that was remade as Heat as well. So he likes to kind of do these things more than once. And I just remember being very, even that time at that time, just not even. I mean, at that time, really spooked by the tone. It's got a really good suspenseful tone that I respected then as a kid. Saw as 10 years later, still enjoyed. And then knowing that going into Red Dragon, I think probably was expecting maybe more of that, maybe a little bit more of a restrained kind of pacing. And I thought Red Dragon maybe just... It's not a bad movie in my opinion, but I think I was looking for something a little bit more... I don't know, like a little bit more highbrow, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, when I watched, and I rewatched both of them recently, because Manhunter, as we tape this, is on streaming Netflix, so I watched it this week, or 2 weeks ago, and then I watched Red Dragon last week, and I've read the book. It's been since high school, but I read the book, and, Michael Mann took a lot of liberties with it. He changed a lot of things, left a lot out. Like when we get to Hannibal Lecter is still the imprisoned psychiatrist, but the whole backstory of cannibalism, his murders, eating the root, that's all gone. They mentioned briefly, he killed some girls on college campuses. So that whole sinisterness and that whole psychotic side of Hannibal Lecter is just kind of not presented, I think, as well as in Red Dragon, because obviously they were trying to go for a money grab, and I really like Red Dragon. But, I mean, they're just capitalizing on the huge success of Hannibal, the huge success of Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
There's a couple funny things about Manhunter and Red Dragon. They share the same director of photography.
Oh, yeah.
Brett Ratner hired the guy that did Manhunter's director, Michael Mann's director of
Who
photography.
was that? Do you remember?
Absolutely, I do. I memorize all this stuff. His name is Dante Spinotti.
It is Dante Spinotti, because that was his go-to cinematographer.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And then there's a funny thing also. The guy that plays Barney in the later movies, the orderly that's a friend of Dr. Lecter,
Yeah,
he's a cop in Manhunter.
Yeah, totally.
Really?
Yeah, he's in every Hannibal Lecter movie. But the last three, he's Barney. The first one, he's just like radioing in that we found Dollarhide, so
Right.
that's a cool little thing.
Yeah, the actors in there, of course, going back, I remember, and I that was probably why when CSI came out, I was very familiar with the lead actor, William Peterson, who was the lead actor in this, but he was the star of Manhunter as well. God, he's so young. And I still think maybe they cut when he had his arm up and he had his shirt off, and they go, and conveniently his arm's right there. So he was a stud, man. He was a...
He had a brief career, there was another LA movie, LA something or other, that he was in kind of mid-80s. He was sort of like Hot Property, and then just, I don't know.
Yeah, what happened after that?
Oh, I don't think
he's been working, but it hasn't been it wasn't until
I just
CSI.
don't think the movies were that financially successful.
No, I don't.
To Live and
so.
Die in LA was the name of the movie. To Live and
Yeah,
Die.
right. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Without a Trace.
Good movies.
It was a 2000.
But they were financially just not. He just didn't have that kind of like leading action hero, whatever.
Yeah, because after
stuff.
Live and Die in L.A. came out, people were wondering if William Friedkin had lost it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But the way he portrayed, just going into the criminal's mind, I always thought that was great in both movies. Reenacting, he was him. He was talking to him. There's a lot of subtlety, like you said, in Manhunter as opposed to Red Dragon. And that's what a lot of the reviews say, too. If you go on Netflix or you go somewhere on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb and you read some of the reviews, and a lot of people kind of get that, especially if they grew up around that time, if they were, say, in their late teens, early 20s in 86.
There's almost a
or even
resentment.
early teens.
There's almost a resentment sometimes in the community that I've seen that, like, how they made Red Dragon, and even though it had an Academy Award-winning screenwriter, the guy that did the screenwriting for Silence of the Lambs, and still has Anthony Hopkins, Edward Norton, Harvey Keitel. Danny Elfman did the music,
same director of photography, like you said. So the looks
Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's like people just hold their nose to Red Dragon. I'm like,
what year did Red Dragon come out?
It's because
2002.
It's because of Brett Ratner. Okay. I think that's the ultimately the problem.
Yeah,
because he doesn't take source material, I don't think, as seriously as maybe some people would like, and that
his body work wasn't very strong. With Rush Hour. And now he's doing this follow-up.
Oh, I like Rush Hour.
Well, that brings us also to
it's number 2. It had a hot chick in it.
Yeah. So what about Brian Cox as far as Hannibal Lecters go?
He played Hannibal Lecter?
Yeah.
Oh, I love him as an actor.
Yeah, everybody.
That's one of the biggest. That's going backwards and looking at. It's because Hannibal Lecter is Anthony Hopkins, or was, I should say, until the TV show. I think that Mads Madsen to me is absolutely spectacular in the role, and now I can't not see him as Hannibal Lecter. But
really,
for 2 decades, it was just Anthony Hopkins. He just owned that so much.
Right.
You can watch you watch another Anthony Hopkins movie. It's like, it's a lighthearted kind of like, it's Emma. He's gonna eat Emma Thompson.
He typecast himself.
This kind of this subtle kind of menace.
Well,
to it, but
he's a very sinister. He can be very sinister. I mean, think of some of the other roles he's played too. Even up to Wolfman and oh gosh, well, there's so many to pick from. He's really good at that kind of.
Thor's dad.
Yeah, of course, Odin.
Odin, yeah.
But yeah, so what do you think as far as
Brian Cox?
Yeah, Brian Cox went. His portrayal, starting the whole thing off.
Right, and of course he was working off the book and the direction of Michael Mann. I think it's almost unfair because Brian Cox is a good actor, and people really, like I said, they kind of resented Red Dragon in some ways. I like his portrayal. He's not Lecter to me. I mean, he was the first one, and I guess he was just kind of going with, I mean,
he was the Jason without the hockey mask. He was the Jason with the bag on his head.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, we judge him by
Darth Vader without the without the mask. You saw too much, I think, and maybe the villain. I mean, Tom Noonan's the villain.
Yeah,
he's creepy. He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's like everything you want from that kind of suspense you get from that character, and I think that Brian Cox doesn't get that.
And take the whole of the movie, like Lecter's cell everything, even the chair that Will Graham sits on, stark white. Everything's painted white. First time we see Lecter, he's kind of sitting there with his feet propped up on some pillows, like he's just kind of Anthony Hopkins. He's in that dungeon,
Totally different. Yeah.
He's in that kind of dungeon in the sanitarium with the brick walls that are they almost look wet, like a dungeon.
It does.
He's got that
like a cave.
protective glass with holes in it, and don't they get the whole.
Don't like Lecter there too.
And he's just
all like
stay away from the glass.
Perfect posture.
Good morning.
Yeah.
He's just got that kind of austere kind of personality.
Closer.
May I see your credentials? But I'm not going to start doing Hannibal Lecter. But we can quote him all night. So, I don't think it's fair to say that Brian Cox isn't as good as Anthony Hopkins because they were asked to do two different things.
Sure.
I think the movie does really emphasize, like you said, the interesting stuff about Hannibal the Cannibal, all that stuff is omitted from Manhunter, and so it's about a cop chasing a serial killer who enlists someone, and ostensibly it's the same storyline as Silence of the Lambs. Forget about Red Dragon, but Silence of the Lambs, which is really the movie that establishes the character of Hannibal. That movie, it's like the build-up is, who is this guy? This guy is larger than life, and that's what watching that show, that film does, is it kind of sets that reveal up, and then as you get to know him more, you realize, holy smokes, this guy's like can do the impossible and whatever.
He's so insanely smart.
He's insanely smart, insanely adept, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Brian Cox was playing and was asked to portray an incarcerated murderer.
Right. Totally.
And Anthony Hopkins was asked to play pretty much the 20th century new kind of universal monster, kind of like a Dracula kind of a thing. He's, like you said, worldly capabilities in terms of intellect and knowledge and then physical strength too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He must have been doing push-ups all day, every day for decades in his jail cell. So they were asked to do different things. So that's my
the role is just richer. It's more interesting, I think. Mm-hmm. That role specifically, Silence of the Lambs versus Manhunter, Hannibal comparison.
So Silence, when that came out, did you guys all go see it in the theater?
Yeah,
I saw Cinema Center, baby.
Yeah,
Cinema Center, and I shit my pants. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's good.
I love that movie.
Did you see it in the theater?
I remember seeing it in the theater,
really?
and I rewatched it last week. Yeah.
Does it hold up?
it does. I thought it did. Yeah,
I think so.
It's great.
I watched it again too, and I just get pulled right back into it. Mm-hmm. And it's funny. In '91, I was dating a girl in high school, and her father worked for the Omaha World Herald, the newspaper here in town. And the World Herald, after it won the movie, after it won the Academy Award, the World Herald published an editorial.
What was the award it won?
I'm sorry?
What award did it win?
The Oscar?
It did? It was Best Picture? What? Guys, I'm not back in high school. I don't fucking remember.
I think it's the only horror movie.
I ask these questions so people learn on the podcast.
Right.
It's one of two considered horror movies that have been nominated
for
Best Picture. Nominated for Best Picture. But it's the only one that won.
Okay.
Exorcist was nominated.
Oh, all right. So look at what you learned, kids. All right, continue on.
Jaws was nominated too, I guess. But Thriller. Okay, we'll talk about Jaws next month. Anyway, my story. The World Herald published an editorial saying the depravity of America. Oh. How can this movie about this transgendered psychopath murderer cutting up women, making suits out of them, and enlisting the help of a guy that eats people win Best Picture? It was like, this is the moral decay of America right there.
Best story.
And I just remember that, and that made me want to dig the movie more.
Oh yeah,
I'm reading this editorial. I'm like, well, I shouldn't be watching this.
Did your girlfriend's dad write that?
He was the editor, so I'm sure he had to make sure things were capitalized or punctuated correctly or good
or put
grammar.
the title on.
I don't know. I just
headline.
That sentence, I have never been so offended. I think you should put a comma after I.
Yeah.
I think that's probably how.
Right. That's my regular.
I have never been so offended.
It's a big damn deal. Billy Crystal coming out in the Academy Awards in a gurney wearing a Lecter mask.
Really?
During the monologue. Yeah.
I was too busy skateboarding back then. I did.
Yeah, no time.
I saw the movie though. Went to the movie.
Yeah.
That movie was thrilling. I remember that's just one of those.
That last scene.
Top 10 film going experiences. I was also in that perfect age, that high school age, to see a movie like that, and man, it just hit all the spots. It was thrilling. It was unbelievable. It was terrifying at the end with Buffalo Bill. About to get Clarice
with so much power over her. He can see. She can clearly see she can't see anything.
It was intelligent. It actually finished better than it started. It was just a dynamite movie. Yeah, that was
well worth a nomination. And it was a little bit different too. The two characters that were the detectives in both, well, I guess both iterations, whether it was Manhunter or whether it was Silence of the Lambs, had two different roles. Kind of, they approached everything different. So what I found really thrilling about somebody getting into the mind of a serial killer and seeing catching tiny little things that you wouldn't catch if you couldn't put yourself in that frame of mind. It seemed like in Silence of the Lambs too, that was kind of happening, but it was more being revealed now on Hannibal's part rather than the detective's part.
Yeah, and there was
because it was a larger role.
There's great depth in the character of Clarice Starling too, because here she was straight out of the academy. I don't even think she graduated because she gets her credential and everything at the end of the movie.
When he
she's a student
says, "Come here," it's a temporary. That's what he says when she shows him her
and being a young woman, and the old boy network of the cops, especially when they go investigate the murders and the sheriffs, they're all talking and looking at her, and just there was that whole dynamic too of that kind of sexism, and I thought
plus Scott Glenn plays like the perfect old boy, you know what I mean, like that Jack Crawford or whatever.
But she had like a fragility, about her, but also tough. I mean, she figures out who Buffalo Bill is before anybody else does. I thought Jodie Foster was fantastic in that role. Absolutely.
Yeah, like the subtle love affair between them. It really was just dynamite.
What was the scariest thing that you remember from seeing it as it in the theater, being young? The one thing that's
I think it's the night vision, right? Like at the end of
the night vision stuff.
Man, that was squirming so hard. Those old Cinema Center chairs,
those squeaky old chairs.
Yeah, right.
I remember. Definitely that. I'd say to a lesser extent, a little bit the part where he's kind of putting on the lipstick and he's dancing and he does the tuck.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, I just felt like
creepy.
I'm like 16, 17, and I'm just like,
I can't even do that.
I'm just like, this is so blowing my mind. Weird that I've never seen anything like that before. And then the part where Clarice is over in the neighbor's house and she's kind of going through the closet and she pulls back that dress and it has the diamond pattern cut in the back and she realizes he's making like she pulled that out and you're just like, people at home, I'm just making a face. Those parts too is where it just kind of punched me in the gut.
I found the part that when she goes to the storage locker in the beginning that he kind of sends her to. That's a really creepy, just like a place, She's in there and there's like
goes through
there's a car covered in American flag and there's mannequins everywhere,
right?
And then she finds a head in a jar, and that was kind of when I woke up in the theater, like, oh, this is real. God, this is something.
It's not boring anymore. No, the movie had so many like shock moments. There's Miggs like throwing semen on her face. There's all these things like you're like. It's not just being a teenager. I think it's that era in film too, where just like it took some serious leaps, and it. It's tough to say after that the movie's pretty restrained, but it is. And that's why when the cop, when Hannibal escapes and the cop is sort of strung up,
he's hung up,
angel or whatever,
with the flag is kind of like wings.
You see that that's an image that just this movie is.
And his guts are all cut up, right? They're like
and when he sits up in the ambulance and pulls off the dead cop's face,
that's what got me. Realizing that he was. That it was that
unstoppable,
right? And he made it out, and he wore this dude's face
as a mask.
Having an old
spoilers.
Spoiler alert.
Right, 30 years spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
So I got a little trivia about Silence of the Lambs. Now, Michelle Pfeiffer turned down the role of Clarice Starling.
Stupid.
Thank God.
And it was offered. The Lecter role was first offered to Sean Connery.
Oh man!
Now that would have been interesting.
Wow!
And he turned it down.
Clarice.
And so they just Clarice.
Fuck you! What did Mig say?
Right. And then Anthony Hopkins was asked based on his portrayal of the Doctor in Elephant Man.
Yeah.
That's what I read.
Good.
Oh, I did
Hell of a
about
movie.
That.
Jonathan Demme, man.
Oh man.
I don't think he's made a film as good as that either. I think that was a high watermark. It was so good, so tight.
There's not a wasted scene in that movie.
No, man, it's a good movie. It says what it needs to say.
So then there was a big 10-year gap, pretty much. Thomas Harris was done counting his money, decided he needed to make a little bit more, so he wrote a book, Hannibal, chronicling his life after escaping the sanitarium. And so then the movie came out with Ridley Scott. So there's a lot of differences between the book and the movie. I mean, you guys borrowed the movie and watched it. What'd you guys think of Hannibal?
I enjoyed it.
It's good. I think he plays him differently in Hannibal. He's not, having watched both of them recently, his eyes, he's just creepier looking in Silence. In Hannibal, he's more like a distinguished older gentleman.
Is that maybe because he
doesn't look as psycho? I don't know.
Yeah,
I still really dig it when he goes when the voice change happens and he starts degrading her, and like that always sticks out to me. It's so creepy the way his voice. It kind of reminds me of like the way Merlin talks in Excalibur. Like there's this change in the way he talks, and now I'm going to talk very degrading to you.
I think Ridley Scott gets in the way of that movie. Just kind of my feeling is that it looks too saturated. Like I don't quite get it. I like the look of Silence of the Lambs and Manhunter too. It's colors are very muted.
Right,
it says a lot about the ambiguity.
That brain is very bright at the end.
It's very red.
Very red. You're right.
Yeah. Now, if you read the book, there's a lot of differences between the book and the movie.
I just kind of read that a little bit,
and they're kind of working with the TV show, and when we get into that, the TV show is kind of filling in all the omissions that the movies couldn't possibly.
Right.
They can't bring a book to life completely, so that's where the TV show is really doing good. I love the character of Mason Verger.
I didn't realize that was Gary Oldman.
Yeah,
me neither until I looked at IMDb.
He specifically asked not to have his name in the credits before the movie.
Oh, really?
He wanted it to be, and they said, "Oh, okay, whatever." So I mean, they obeyed, his wishes, and so it's at the end. His names are at the end of the credits. But he plays it with such that kind of creepy, pervy.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that what he's at?
To this day, there's like the end of the movie when Cordell, his manservant nurse, pushes him into the pit. In Omaha, there's a radio commercial for a lawyer, and it's Cordell something, and so every time they say men wanting divorce, call Cordell, blah blah blah. I'll be at my car and I'll go Cordell. That's how much I love this movie.
Oh, you love it.
I love Hannibal. I just think it's just a guilty pleasure of mine. I mean, it's perverse and it's totally. I mean, it's everything that Silence of the Lambs is not. It's not a tight thriller. It's totally extravagant. It's totally
like until he hangs and disembowels the guy in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
Until that scene, I was kind of like, "Is this even a horror movie? Like, when's the shit going to start happening?" Nothing's going on in that movie.
That's the Italian investigator, right?
It's kind of
Piazzi or Patsy.
Potsy. He's like the one character that I enjoyed watching. So was that like the end of the first act? They whack that guy, and it's like
when he's like sitting there chain smoking, and he's got that beautiful wife that wants to go to the opera. And he's sitting there chain smoking. And he knows is like there's this do I turn him into the feds because I know he's here? Do I turn him? He's impersonating Dr. Fell. Do I turn him in? Or do I get Mason Verger's $3 million reward or whatever? And he's wrestling with that. And then he has that phone call with Clarice, and she's like, she finds out because he's accessing the FBI computers and everything.
The call came from inside the house.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I just like the guy's just like chain smoking, and he's just like he's a great actor. And I read a little bit about him. And he's just been in a ton of old Italian.
What's that guy's name? Do you remember?
Let me think about it for a second.
Take those away from
Giancarlo Giannani. I don't know. You speak like 7 languages.
Yeah. I should watch more Italian horror movies. What I should do.
Yeah, right. That's all the Italian Paul knows. That's as long as it has been.
No, por favore.
I have no idea what it means.
Yeah. Please, no, please.
But he's just been in a ton of old genre picks. Yeah. He's always a cop or something like that, So, but he's really good in that role. He's
really good in that role. Yeah, it's really charismatic.
So, but you're right. It's everything that Silence of the Lambs is not. It's extravagant. I mean, the whole thing about training these boars to eat.
Right.
I'll tell you what.
Although I am scared of pigs after that. That was scary. Boars, pigs, anything that will eat you.
That's
don't dig on swine.
A theme that kind of shows back up on the TV show, and also then in was it livestock or whatever, where the pigs are used to dispose of the bodies.
Yeah, and that's kind of neat because that's where Verger gets all his money, is because his dad was a famous, a big time rancher of meat, poultry, hog farmer, you know, all kinds of
pork
things.
Producer.
He was a pork. Well, I mean, I think they said all kinds of meat. He's just like this, just giant conglomerate, and that's where.
Yeah.
But you know, like when he eats, when Mason, try cutting off your face, you know, and he feeds it to the dog.
Oh, yeah.
They do that scene in the Hannibal TV show, except he feeds it to Will Graham's dogs, and it's more graphic on the TV show on NBC
than the movie.
Yeah, because it's really dimly lit, and it's like black blood. I mean, you can see the kind of the shininess of his face.
You see his like cheeks, the whole thing.
It's not like bloody red, but it's dark and it's slick like oil. It's black, and he's just cutting off, and he's like. Then Hannibal's like, try cutting off your nose and eating it. Okay. He doesn't. And
how fucked up would that guy have to be?
Right. Thomas Harris.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
I'm glad I never did any of that acid back in college.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Well, yeah, so after that, there's also the series, but in the chronological order of the movies, after Hannibal would remade Red Dragon, right? But that's they kind of set that up even to be just a straight alone prequel in that particular franchise, right? Kind of excluding, you know, any.
I think there was just that much disappointment in Hannibal. I think I'm one of the chorus of boo birds on Hannibal because it was such a departure from the tone. First of all, it's like you had this like epic film, this perfect kind of package movie, which like I, not having read the books, couldn't imagine a sequel. Like that was one of the jokes. In fact, I had it's like, it's like a sequel to Silence of the Lambs. How do you do that one? You know, like it doesn't make any sense to me. It's too good. And then along comes Hannibal. It's like, oh, this is not doing it for me. So I think they wanted to reboot the series, right?
Sure. Well, and they were a little disappointed in. I mean, they wanted to kind of continue the continuity. And you know, and Anthony Hopkins isn't against cashing a check. So they just threw a bunch. I mean, and don't forget, Hannibal was a huge success. I mean, it was for over a decade. It was the number one R-rated film of all time, especially in debut.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, I mean like $80 million the first weekend. That's on like
Hannibal did.
Yeah, it made like $350 million worldwide. Wow. I mean, it's a huge hit. So they got all this money that they're counting, right? And so of course they're like, hey, let's make
much that came from Italy when those numbers aren't very good.
So and Hopkins signed on, and then they got the screenwriter from Silence of the Lambs. So they tried to kind of recreate the magic. Howard Shore didn't come back for the music, but they got Elfman. And Elfman's score, give him credit. I think it's one of his better scores in the 2000s. He was really hot in the 80s and 90s, and he, I think it's a good score. It's a little bit more bombastic than the synthesized stuff but I mean that's a period. I mean that's period sound. I mean he went for the orchestral sound with Red Dragon. So they went to try and make a boatload of cash, and I appreciate the fact that they stuck to the book. The only added scenes, they added a couple extra Lecter scenes because they had to, get Anthony Hopkins some screen time. I did appreciate there's kind of the pre-credit roll of Will Graham, kind of sets up the Will Graham character by Ed Norton. He's sitting in Hannibal's study and he's like, man, we're trying to catch this Chesapeake Ripper who's Hannibal. We're trying to catch him, and then we're totally wrong, Dr. Lecter. And he's like, Dr. Lecter's like, come back in the morning when you've had some sleep. We'll start the whole profile over again. And so Hannibal's out getting a knife, right? Because he's going to gut Will Graham. Graham's just kind of waiting for Hannibal to get his coat, and he looks at this book that's open on Hannibal's desk, and it's an anatomy book, and written over a part of the body, I can't remember, it says sweetbreads. And so he knows, bingo. So Hannibal comes in with this knife, guts Will. Will grabs there's like a quiver of arrows.
Of course.
Right. So he grabs his arrow, he stabs, shoots Hannibal, so then the credits roll while there's all the newspaper headlines of Hannibal's trial. So that kind of gets you up to speed on that, and then shows you where Will Graham is, in semi-retirement, nursing his wounds and everything till they call him out of retirement. So I really dig Red Dragon. I really liked it. It was a lot more faithful to the book, and the end of Manhunter is not the end of the book, so I'm glad that they did the original ending of the book in Red Dragon. So,
what were the differences on that for people who haven't seen it?
Well, in Red Dragon, let's go back to Manhunter. Manhunter, he's about Francis Dollarhide, the Tooth Fairy, is about to kill the blind co-worker Reba.
And you're going to go through and spoil all these now? Is that the plan?
Wayne, can I?
We say
Sure.
All right, so he's going to kill Reba. He's in the house, and he's playing Inagata Davida by Iron Butterfly, super loud.
Oh, God.
It reminds me of the fireworks scene in
Made me nauseous.
Pulp Fiction. No.
Oh,
Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights scene with Night Ranger.
Because he's kind of prancing around with
Jesse's girl. And
so Will Graham and the SWAT team, they're kind of ham-handedly making their way. Will Graham's the only cop that gets there in time, and he bursts through a window, and then there's a gunfight between him and Francis Dollarhide, and he's dead. End of the story. Will Graham goes on his boat and retires for good.
Right.
In Red Dragon,
Right.
The Tooth Fairy kills one of Reba's co-workers, loads him in a van. Him and Reba and the dead guy are all back at the Tooth Fairy's house. And he knows Will Graham's onto him. So he's like... So he fakes his own death. He shoots she's blind, right? So he sets his house on fire, shoots the guy in the head that he's already killed, puts his dentures in the mess, sets the house on fire, and eventually the propane tank or whatever blows the house up. So they think, oh, when we found his body, here's some dentures. The blind girl's alive. She gets out. And so Will Graham goes back to his house. Well, earlier in the movie, it's found out that Lecter communicated a message with Will Graham's address. So Francis Dollarhide goes down to Florida and tries to kill Will and his family.
Which, that was a lot scarier.
Yeah, because you think the movie could be done, you know. And then then there's just more, and then the wife shoots him, and then at the end he's retired on his boat.
Yeah, see, kind of the same.
And then there's the kicker where Dr. Chilton comes down, kind of a coda ending, and says, well, Dr. There's somebody from the FBI. She's here to see you to ask you some questions about a murder.
That's
and,
right.
he kind of perks up, you know. So that's supposed to be Clarice coming in.
I see.
Clarice by Sean Connery.
Yeah, right.
Clarice.
Clever.
So that's the movies. Then there's Hannibal Rising. I don't know, you guys. I read the book and saw the movie years ago. Came out in 2007. It's all right.
Yeah, I just...
There we go.
He's making a face.
There we go.
Anything about Hannibal Rising at all?
Wow.
It's
the whole story of Lecter's kind of born in the wake of World War II. And
that's right. This movie
and he was born of a Lithuanian count.
Yep.
His mom's an Italian noble.
And a vampire.
And he has a sister. And at the end of the war, the Nazi turncoats and others were fleeing the Russian advance into Germany. And there's the winter, and so the troops and the deserters, whatever, they eat Hannibal's sister, his little sister. So Hannibal goes out on a revenge mission, tracks down all the old soldiers, kills them, and eats them. Mm-hmm. And then he gets accepted into Johns Hopkins University and goes to USA to study psychiatry.
I mean, that's what it takes to get into Johns Hopkins. A body count.
Right.
Well, you know, I mean, the mission standards are high.
Some experience. A taste for human flesh.
Yeah, mission standards are a motherfucker. Yeah. So that's the movie. I mean, the book's okay. The book's all right. The movie, it had no big stars, not a good big name director. It was just kind of. And the movie came out at the same time the book did. So I mean, they worked in tandem. Like,
you
Oh
know.
wow.
I think Harris did the screenplay too, and it shows. It's just kind of.
He did do that. Yeah, he did do that.
It's just, you know, see it if it's on Netflix. You know, it's a Hannibal Lecter movie, but
sure.
So what about the series? Now you guys are really into the series.
Yeah.
Series.
And we just got some news today on the day of this taping that we decided to do a Hannibal Lecter.
I've had this date circled on my calendar. Like, we got Paul in the studio. We're going to talk about cooking human flesh. I'm all excited about the TV show. And then about 4 hours ago, they announced, we're canceling the show.
Yeah. Season 3 is the last one on NBC, which is a freaking miracle, right?
You
3
think?
seasons. Yeah. I think it takes like 30 minutes into the show. It's like, how is this on network TV?
Right.
There is what's the time slot on this? 3:00 in the morning? I mean, it's insane. I love it. I don't watch it on TV. I watch like a lot of stuff. I stream it. I legitimately watch it on TV.
Yes.
But send your cards and letters too.
Yeah.
Right. FCC care of. But I just found, first of all, there is a lot of, and I suspect you probably feel this too. There's a lot of attention played to the food side of Hannibal, right? So this is the first time in the series where you get to see the kind of, and food styling plays a big role, and set design, and you just kind of get to see the sort of cultured aspect, the culinary cultured aspect of Hannibal, which I suppose is personally really interesting to me, but I also think it fits with the storyline. I think it fits with with the character. I mean, for sure. So
yeah, Paul's right. One thing that it's always been talked about, except in Manhunter, is that Hannibal eats his victims. He's the serial killer who, instead of taking a trophy, like a personal artifact of the victim, he takes an organ and just wonderfully prepares it, and pairs it with a wine and puts it in the course of a meal, and he serves it not only to himself but to his dinner guests. What a great thing, going back to Red Dragon, the very beginning of the film, Lecter's sitting in the Baltimore Symphony Hall, and the flute player, Benjamin Raspel, is fucking up Hannibal's favorite piece of music. He's like, he's playing like a sour note, and he's like, and Hannibal's just kind of looking at him, like almost like licking his chops. He's almost wiping his mouth at the back of his hand. So of course he kills Benjamin Raspel and has the Symphony Guild over, and they're having this wonderful meal, and they're like, oh, we almost feel guilty having this wonderful meal and fundraising celebration when one of our members is missing, and Hannibal's just like pouring gravy over something. So what's neat about the TV show is, like Paul said, there's actually showing him killing and cooking, and not just stirring it in a pot. I mean, he's breading it. He's what he's doing.
I mean, it's food porn shots. Like there's real attention placed on the on the cookery part of it, and I think that there's a sensuality there that works really well with the show.
And a taboo, you think, that makes it...
I think it's more about...
Because you want to eat it, but it's your...
Exactly.
It looks good.
I think that's the piece. It's, it's like enticing, because I think they show him preparing kidneys, they show him preparing liver, they show him preparing sweetbreads or brains or something like that too, and they look really similar anyway. But, you see these preparations and you think, oh, that looks... I mean, I'd eat that.
Yeah, right?
Sure, right?
If Paul put that in front of me on a plate, I'd
Yeah.
say, well, thanks a lot.
I've been accused of that at the boiler room, so yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
My wife had the bone marrow appetizer.
Well, send your regrets to Benjamin Raspel.
It was really good.
Yeah, so and it's funny, like, you'll see these pieces of meat being cut up, with a knife and everything, and then every once in a while, it's like, that's a heart. Or that's a lung.
Sure.
And then other times it's just like a piece of flesh or something like that. But then there was one scene in the second season where he's actually got the guy's leg, and he has a bandsaw in the basement, and he's just like cutting the foot off of the leg and then preparing the leg in another way, and it's just like...
He's making asabuco or something.
Yeah.
And every episode...
Asabuco.
Every episode of the show is named after a different dish. The first season was French, and the second was Japanese. So I have these...
Yeah, there are these different courses. So
I have these titles here.
So what was really kind of fun to watch on the show, because I'd like to kind of see them as a stack. I think that's not a show that you kind of want to wait a week to see the next episode. Mm-hmm. So that's probably another reason why it makes less sense to put on a network, and more sense to find a home that can, offers a stack, Amazon or Netflix or something like that. But anyway... I mean, it starts with, and I think it affects the whole kind of aesthetic of the show, right? So it starts with this season of French dishes, right? And so they're named courses. If you were to have a 13-course meal, this is sort of like the series that these dishes would sort of arrive in, in a certain formal setting. And I've also done some kind of, because I was just really curious that who was responsible for some of the food design, and there's a separate blog that's dedicated to that, and all the work that goes into those giant pièces montées, like these. One that really comes to mind is there's a like the carcass of it looks like a venison or whatever. Do you see the rib cage kind of sticking out? There's like grapes and flowers and stuff like pouring out of it. Well, every episode has something along those lines, whether it's crustaceans and it's very gnarly. And if you've been to the boiler room, you see Vera Mercer's photography there, or if you're familiar with her work in general, those still lives are very evocative of the same kind of aesthetic, and so I was really drawn to it.
My favorite's the severed pig's head.
It's like a silver platter.
And there's like grapes and everything else. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
But I think that's what's sort of fascinating about the season, right? It is paralleling the symphony of a meal, at the sort of build, and I think it sort of each episode it does sort of call back to that a little bit. That, I mean, all those things are really, to me, really interesting add-ons. Then the second season, when it transfers over to a Japanese meal, and you have the same named courses one after the other, the sound of the show completely changes, right? So the music is like kabuki music all season long, and it just gets real stark.
And I think the music is done by the drummer for Air, the French band Air. He does all the music. Right? Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's doing third season, but I know he did 1 and 2.
Well, the third season, such as I've seen so far, is already like much more lush and plush and really, and that's in Italian. So it begins sort of in Italy, and the meal that you're sort of following, the various courses are Italian in the third season. And again, it's more orchestral. It's more, think more like gilded, Baroque type room and velvet and that kind of stuff. That's the sort of look that you get for food, and also just for the general aesthetic of the show. I just love the way it's all tied together, and of course the performances are just dynamite, right? Because one of the things when you're a cook and you watch people cook on.
Right, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, let's get into a menu here.
Well, I mean, for starters, first of all, it's just like watching someone cook, or that's supposed to be adept at cooking on TV is really frustrating, because you can always tell when somebody doesn't hold a knife right, or when they can't really hold, you can see those little things. But the show does a great job of making Hannibal seem like this is very familiar. He's very familiar with these things, and if you were to sort of go through the anatomy of a person and try to think like, how would we take a human being and turn that into a 13-course meal, right? Like take the whole sort of top to bottom kind of thing, and that's you just get this sense of competency. Like, this is a guy who could totally dissect a human being,
and that doesn't bring you out of it at all. I mean, knowing Hannibal's history. Where did he fit in culinary school, or did he teach?
I don't believe in culinary school. So, I think being a surgeon, I think probably makes him better suited for that. And I think as an epicure, as someone who's just, there's another part of that when he's serving the
passion.
Food. It's just passion, and also like the home cook. The sort of there's this before there were restaurants. People, they cooked, and they cooked extremely opulently at home, and that's kind of the feeling of the show too. That he's hearkening back to this other era.
Right.
There's this sort of other outside of sort of contemporary society that somehow you almost think like this would be normal or right. I don't know. It just it's so seditious. It's so
and it's kind of like your farm, like at your restaurant. You have this, and I'm not speaking for you, but you have like this farm to table concept that you're really pioneering here in Omaha. And it's like you're contacting the people that produce the food, and you're kind of basing your menu on what's available. So when I watch it, it's like, like Hannibal, maybe he's cutting open this guy and he's a smoker, so he's not going to use the lungs. But, that doesn't look too bad.
Sure. He's like, well, you're right, because he's discriminating, like, what part of that person would be,
or what makes him rude, or maybe I'm going to do something with his tongue.
Well, there's an episode where they talk about how somebody who is who knows that they're going to die is, of course, that meat tastes bitter. That's the whole. What's the name of the blind woman who invented the slaughterhouse? Temple Grandin, right? Temple Grandin. She invented the whole process by which animals can be more humanely slaughtered, because there is something about adrenaline being released right before slaughter, and that affects the quality and flavor and the rigor mortis and all that kind of stuff of the meat.
I've never heard that.
So there's a movie, I think, about her
Faces of Death.
The
slaughterhouse scene in Faces of Death.
Slaughterhouse.
I've seen that one.
No, but I mean, I've. So, anyways, there's a component to that. I think that's brought up in the show. I think they talk a little bit for a second about. Will and Hannibal are talking about this dish that they're having, and it's like, well, this tastes like, it's bitter, like, or something, like they allude to the fact that this person or this thing knew that it was going to die before it was.
And that makes it taste better?
No, bitter. It's like
bitter.
There's there's a lot of things.
That makes more sense to me.
Yeah, and in handling meat, there's a lot of things that you do to, like commercially that you do. A lot of times even before restaurants see it. To improve the texture and then flavor. So, like, really, the best example is like with fish, right? So, there's this Japanese process called ikejima, where you take a fish, live fish, you'll bleed it, usually cut right at the tail, and then at the head, the tailbone is broken, and then the spinal cord is needled right there. So it's bled and needled, and that helps to sort of elongate the rigor mortis so it doesn't happen too quickly, because with fish, you're sort of dealing with rigor mortis, which is increasing the firmness of the flesh, which is desirable. But you don't necessarily want super fresh fish, like fish that's been killed immediately or instantly. You want a little bit of a kind of that cured kind of decomposing aroma. Things do get sort of tertiary or secondary. They get a little bit more interesting. And so, there's this optimal time frame that you'll eat something. It's not necessarily like 10 minutes after it's been slaughtered. Sometimes it's 2 days or 3 days. And ikejime can help that intersection happen at that time and not sort of miss the rigor mortis setting in and then turning mushy by the time the meat is sort of at its optimal flavor. With other meats, with animals and like cattle, for example, having been spent time in slaughterhouses because I'm really interested in the process. Not only is it designed in a certain way to placate the animal before they're stunned and then knocked, but the process, the sort of quick process by which the animal's cleaned, hung, broken, and then aged, right? Because with larger animals, you don't want to. It's not optimal to eat. You don't eat cow fresh. You want at least 10 days, 14 days or something like that to allow the rigor mortis to subside, and then that's when you get those nice, tender steaks. Before then, you can totally tell the difference. It's much more rubbery. It's just harder. It's
so what does that say about Hannibal's? I mean, was he eating them later?
Well,
was he aging that?
I think so.
In his basement,
right. You totally get that sense that he's hanging a leg or whatever, like prosciutto.
And the FBI inspector, she goes down at the end of the second season, and there's that before they have that struggle or whatnot, and she happens upon the bandsaw things that I think he vacuumed,
like the butcher shop.
He's like vacuum sealed some meat, and it's just like she's stumbled.
Sous vide,
right? Yeah, it's totally sous. She's got all this sous vide like arm meat or whatever. Like, whoa, that's
see, that explains a lot of those movies where you see meat hooks hanging in and there's people's body parts there. They were just aging.
It does make it easier to break something down. You can hang them upside down
and freeze them. That also, that's easy to cut out.
At some point, you need to preserve it. So freezer doesn't hurt, but so it's you kind of get that sense like that's exactly what he's doing. He's sort of evaluating with each kill, like what is the optimal, like what does this person have that this person may not have, and we're gonna eat that. We're gonna eat this person's liver. We'll take this person's tendons. We'll take this person's leg meat. We'll take this person's brain. We'll take who
am I going to serve it to? Because in second season he has Jack Crawford, the head of the FBI. He has them over for dinner, and they're going over case files, and it's like, well, this soup is fantastic. What's in it?
Absolutely. I know it's all those things. There's unfortunately a lot of cooking has sort of lost the whole animal thing. There's a guy named Fergus Henderson, who's a British cook, who has a great book called Nose to Tail, and he has a restaurant called St. John's 2, but St. John's in particular, it was really groundbreaking in returning kind of nose to tail cooking around the world. Like American cooks have really responded well to that. British cooks have responded well to that. So
there's these value in every part of the animal.
Exactly, and so you're looking to find. It's not just take a cow. There's like 3 steaks that everybody's familiar with, right? Like you've got strip loin, you've got tenderloin, you've got ribeye, and they're all just like lying down the back, and that's it. Well, you've got a 2,000-pound carcass. There's maybe 100 pounds of that is in those among those 3 steaks. That's less than 5% of the whole animal. There's still.
Well, you got to take those lips and assholes and make hot dogs.
Well, yeah, Hebrew National, baby.
Head cheese.
Yeah, head cheese. But there's like the obvious stuff. There's like head cheese. There's obviously what you can do with bones. I mean, if you see the process like at a slaughterhouse, I mean, there is no such thing. You talk about waste. I mean, nothing gets wasted. Every tiny little piece goes to something, from plastics all the way to gelatin to steaks. I mean, whatever. It all gets it all gets used somewhere.
Lotion for the skin.
That's right. Puts the lotion. But yeah, I mean, I think there are some interesting aspects to flavor amelioration, things that he does that feeding. He feeds his prey different foods to improve the sweetness of the meat. And there's another example I think of that where. There used to be a butcher. This is sort of Omaha lore. I don't know exactly where this was. This is an old-time Omaha guy that would tell me about this. That all of the cattle, all the meat that he sold came from cattle that had been exclusively fed from bakery, like second-day bakeries, leftovers.
Oh.
So like donuts and sweet whatever bread, whatever, all given to this rancher. That rancher would feed that. This would be the sort of finishing food for these cattle, and then that cattle would be processed, sent specifically to this butcher, and how that would affect the flavor, the sort of flavor of the meat. And so
sweet steak.
Yeah, those are things that I don't know if it necessarily translates sweet to sweet, but but definitely there's a difference and an improvement in flavor.
A lot of tasty people here.
So like in third season, when we see like the severed arm, and he's having the snails feast on it to improve the flavor of the escargot.
Right, exactly.
Oh man,
precisely.
This show's nuts.
It is so inconceivable this show is on network TV. Right?
Absolutely.
From like feeding like I think first season there's mushrooms that are grown on people too.
Yes.
Cultivated mushrooms.
Yes.
And so
he takes the
this is
victims
super gnarly
and keeps them not alive,
partially alive.
Partially
partially alive.
Yeah,
that's
they're in like a zombie state, like a sleep state. They're kind of underground, sedated. He's got them hooked up to IVs and everything, and it's kind of like in
cultivating
Seven.
mushrooms. Oh yeah, that's what it is. This is like Seven, but on network TV.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at even the
What's
History
in the
Channel,
box?
it's not NBC, but even History Channel had Vikings, and that was brutal, and that was still on.
True.
But again, that's on your regular basic cable.
I just but
on NBC,
I can't see
before
Mrs. Freed
Fallon.
watching this.
Yeah.
I think Mrs. Freed would not approve
No.
of the show.
No.
I think she would be.
No,
there'd
she'd
be
put
some
us in
finger-
timeout. She'd separate us for sure if we were drawing. if we were drawing pictures of filleted human beings instead of doing our assignment of the snowman or something.
The
like
school's got psychologists after you there.
Right.
Paul and I used to draw these battle scenes, like caves and cliffs, and we're going off the subject. And then everybody at the end of the battle would be dead.
Yeah, everyone died.
And then we'd draw a giant butt over it, like it was like
What?
fart joke.
Yeah,
Fart joke.
It's all a great thing.
Everybody's dead. Boys, yes, Mrs. Freed. So Mrs. Freed. Hannibal Lecter, kids.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that was fascinating.
We got a little more time left, but first off, Paul, what would you serve if you had a 200-pound human?
200-pound human.
Your favorite dishes?
Non-smoker, light drinker.
Yeah, and maybe like some
wine drinker
donuts
or whiskey
here or there.
drinker. Let's talk.
Whiskey drinker.
Whiskey
but
drinker,
also
okay.
likes the donuts.
So whiskey's good because whiskey would help. Like whiskey, like Armagnac, would help the liver. So you definitely want to do something with the liver there.
Glad I
Kind of
stopped
hopefully
drinking whiskey.
Yeah.
Hopefully, try to get an inflated, fatted liver. It's maybe someone who's. So I think kind of that would be something. I think one of the courses. It's interesting. Human anatomy is not the same as a lot of animals, right? So you don't have the loin meats, which are actually along the back. You don't have those on people, which is, this is sort of funny.
I know you've been to Walmart lately.
So you're saying bacon? There's plenty of bacon on people.
Human bacon.
That's not meat.
Yeah, it's not really meat.
Yeah,
It's marbled for sure.
well, that's actually, if we really get down to it, it would be advantageous. Because like a cow is slaughtered in about 18 months, maybe 24 months, typically. Even the like Wagyu, like the famously fatty Japanese breed, whatever. And unfortunately, a young cow never really marbles, right? There'll be this really fat sort of. And if you've ever seen animals going to slaughter, like the typical commodity beef, they look just like these little fat. They can't even essentially barely even move their legs. They're just kind of like these. Yeah. They're so kind of like in a sleeve of fat because of the way that they're all rushed to gain weight before they're processed, and they never really marble. Well, the way that we develop is, the way that our species develops, we would have a much better likelihood of marbling, right? Because unless we were going to kill like a 2-year-old, when there wouldn't be any meat there. So you'd probably,
but it'd be the cheeks would be really tender.
Cheeks, I suppose,
and the brain, nice little.
Yeah, but there's not. I mean, I suppose there'd probably be something, but it would be. You know what an ortolan is? Have you guys ever heard of? They refer to it in the show. Ortolan. They eat ortolan actually.
What's ortolan?
Ortolan's a game bird. So I'm not sure what episode, but ortolan's this like French delicacy where this bird is. It's a songbird. It's a protected bird.
Oh, I know the episode you're talking about. Oh, I know what that was called.
Ortolan. They say really fast, and so you can't really catch it. But ortolan is this, like the epicure's most sought after kind of dish because it's this beautiful songbird they sort of fly across the southwest of France, and so it's illegal to do this. It's illegal to consume it. Somehow, of course, people do, and they, it's just like elephant tusks or whatever. Like people, they still poach this stuff. And when these songbirds are trapped, their eyes are gouged out, and then they're forced to eat. They're force-fed grains that have been soaked in Armagnac, and then ultimately they're smothered in Armagnac. You kill them by smothering them in Armagnac. They're small little birds.
What's Armagnac?
Armagnac is like brandy. It's like cognac.
Like cognac.
Just it comes from this particular area in southwestern France.
Let's hope I go that way.
So then that bird is essentially roasted. After that, it's like roasted whole, right? So bones and all, you roast it whole, and you're supposed to eat it
just like
as one unit, right? And when you eat it, the practice is you put a towel over your head or you put a napkin over your head. Whether or not it's to like hide your identity, the lore is also that it like offends the gods because it's such a beautiful songbird. Whatever the case is, but you eat the bird whole.
Wow,
they do it on the show.
They do it on the show. Yeah, they do. They eat ortolan. Oh man, the best thing ever. But just that kind of. Where do we get to ortolan? How do we get?
I don't know.
We were talking about 200-pound guy that ate donuts.
Yeah, we're talking about what you cook.
The marbling. Yeah.
Marbling, I think, just different. Yeah, I mean, just different ways.
Listeners like, right?
Oh, where do we talk about eating babies? Come on, guys, we were talking about eating babies.
That's where we were. Let's move on to testicles, huh? Can we?
Babies have tiny testicles. Not that I remember.
But I guess my point is that you can make probably I was going to say there's not enough there on a baby, but the reality is if you can take an ortolan.
Now getting back to testicles, I think you'd have to do it totally American style with like deep fat fry them.
Oh yeah, I think that's.
We can get really low on this too because have you ever had the Filipino
sperm sacs or whatever?
No, the baloo.
No, what is that?
It's the egg. It's like a chicken egg that's fertilized.
Oh, okay.
And so there's still like a little chick in there, kind of.
Oh,
yeah.
And it's delicious.
I'm
it's
gonna
great
hide under the table.
Yeah. So yeah, we
They're
could do
fertilized eggs.
That would be
There's the
different to
century
do
egg.
with a human and very. Yeah,
but like if we were to restrict the conversation to like fully grown,
that's right,
like 18-year-old or more.
Yeah, we haven't
let's keep it legal here. No jailbait, murder, cannibalism.
I think at that point,
jailbait if they're not born yet. Technically,
you're talking about
the consent to being eaten.
No. If you kill them, you're going to jail.
Well, there's plenty of paperwork they have to.
Yeah, that's right. God,
18-year-old or older. What are we eating?
I just think that we start with. You just know that the assuming that they put on some weight, they would be more marble. That's to our advantage, right? So we would be able to do that. The problem is like the anatomy is like dramatically different. So the muscles that you'd be getting, I mean, realistically from a person are going to be from the waist or below. There's just not a lot of stuff above that would be really useful. And normally muscles aren't, the more they're used, the sort of tougher and more. The fibers grow differently. They hydrate differently. So
you wouldn't want to eat the rock.
So you'd want like a teenage girl for real because they don't do anything but lay around.
right.
Lay around watching Netflix.
So you'd want to, you'd want to sort of. Although I have heard this. This is a horrible thing. I've heard that human skin and pork skin is very similar. So
really?
There's probably things you could do there, like chicharrones or something like that.
Yeah.
A little snack.
That. Oh, we should have you can have like a Hannibal food party. That would be great.
Yeah.
Have a Hannibal dinner and pick some of the best dishes that he's made.
Yeah, but I think
Halloween.
You see Hannibal also. I mean, he's really he's geared more towards the offal, and I think that makes the most sense. I think
and those would be organ meats.
Those are organ meats, right?
Okay.
So I think that's really where you probably spend most of the. You get the highest quality. Between the liver or the kidney, the usual stuff. The pancreas or sweetbreads. Brain, that's probably where you'd find the most brain.
An appendix appetizer, maybe.
Yeah, right.
That's
it's
rare.
just a wee little.
So people do eat pancreas.
Yeah, so that's sweetbread.
That's what you would
sweetbread. Yeah.
Oh,
sweetbread it's the thymus glands here. So in a calf or something, it would be along the neck, or as well as the pancreas.
See, I always thought that was a joke in Ferris Bueller when he says we ate pancreas.
Oh, because of sweetbread, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, that's funny. He's just making it up. Look at pancreas. He means something else.
Yeah.
So I blow my mind.
So yeah, there's I mean, relatively weight wise too. I mean, it'd be more efficient, I suppose, to eat. I've eaten lungs before, not human lungs, obviously. But, lungs are not particularly. But you could make sausage with human.
Wouldn't think that would be.
Now, when my wife and I, the first time we ate the Boiler Room,
great segue.
Right. She ordered as an appetizer, and we shared it. The bone marrow, appetizer. You
could probably do that with a femur. I mean, you need a big,
and it's served in the bone.
Yeah.
Well, we paint a picture here.
So it's meat butter.
Yeah. It was wonderful. I mean, it tasted fantastic. She was a little apprehensive just because it was served in a bone, but I mean that was short lived. I mean,
because it's part of the bone.
Yeah, so it's the interior of the bone. It's a soft tissue.
And she'd feel the same way if you served her fish with a head on it. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, it's bone marrow. It's in a bone.
You don't want to recognize what you're eating.
Yeah.
Right.
You suck the marrow.
It's like
out
the
of
Christmas
those little
story.
baby's
He's
arms.
smiling. He's smiling at me. So they cut the head of the duck off.
Yeah.
No, I think human brain would probably be one of the more interesting dishes you could do. I mean, brain in general is really soft; it never really firms up.
Can't you get a disease from eating brain?
Oh well, now we're worried about diseases. So,
I thought that wasn't
real serious.
That was in that movie I reviewed last week. We talked about We Are What We Are. The lady, she dies at the beginning of the film, and they give her an autopsy and think that she died from Parkinson's, but it's actually the doctor. The doctor kind of keeps looking. He's like, no, it wasn't Parkinson's. It was. And he looks it up, and it's this disease that originates or is found mostly in
Crowfield Jacobs.
It's not
that's basically mad cow's disease.
Yeah,
just the germ from,
they find it a lot in South America where there's like tribes with cannibalism.
I see.
So.
No, I mean that's the theory is that
now you're worried about this.
Yeah, the theory is that
hey, well, if you're going to be, I keep healthy.
Well, if you I'm
going to go on to eat another person later day.
People, if I were worried about disease. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's what they believe propagates mad cow disease. So animals will eat neural tissue, and that's where that comes from. And you can't. So even though neural tissue it would be turned into a protein topper, so it would be like completely denatured and turned into a powder that would be then spread over or sprayed over grain. So like a cow, like that's that in a commercial or commodity beef operation, you have to at the end of that cow's life, you have to gain so much weight so quickly. They eat a lot of grain, but they also eat a lot of these like protein powders, like just like power lifter might just to put on that extra few pounds.
Oh man, I do protein powder.
Those protein powders for a while were made from. Again, you go back to the slaughterhouse, and they had this neural tissue, and they would turn that into. They would incorporate that as part of that feed. So that's what they say created some of the problems with mad cow in the first place, and that's So I mean, you're right in the sense of concern about mad person disease or mad Jakob Creutzfeldt may not want to. I wouldn't recommend eating human brain.
Don't eat brain, children.
But I think that would probably be the most interesting human organ to consume. I think,
as consumed at the end of Hannibal, the movie, when they ate Paul Krendler's brain. Yeah. And he fried it like
himself. The little boy, eats it on the plane.
I read that in the book. In the book, Hannibal didn't she eat it with him.
Yeah, she consumed some.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Classic brain dishes you have, brain with scrambled eggs and black truffle is excellent. Brain with brown butter, capers, sautéed with brown butter and capers. Those are two kind of classic. Brain ravioli.
I had fried brain
ravioli
at a place on Broadway on Council Bluffs. There was a place.
Is that right?
And it had the consistency like the white of an egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's about right.
Brainiola.
Which is different than sweetbread. Sweetbreads do firm up. They actually have a real kind of hazelnut-like flavor and are a little bit. There's more toothsomeness to it. So they look really similar, but the texture is completely different. I don't know how a human pancreas would behave, but I mean, in terms of like a veal pancreas, that becomes kind of like you can crisp up the outside and it becomes kind of.
It's
nice
to be more
like
pork than cattle. You think?
Maybe, pork. I guess that's true. So, pork pancreas is a little bit firmer. It's like almost a little bit too chewy. So
could you take any part of it, like just musculature of the human body, and grind it into a beef?
Yeah, I mean, you can.
But it'd be too.
You can
too
always
tough.
grind. You can always that's sort of like the cheap way out. Sort of like
next unchopped.
That'd be great if they had like
in a live, right? They
your ingredients are
with the glue.
A human heart. Toilet bowl cleanser.
But that's what you do. You probably, the tongue probably would be very, would be an easy one to, you pull out. You probably braise that or pickle it or something, and then you you just have a lot of the leg. You'd have the leg muscles. That's really where you get the vast majority.
That's what
of
they do on The Walking Dead.
Yeah, so there you go.
So what if somebody, and this isn't getting tacky already. So what if somebody was, like a paraplegic or something like that, and they spent their life in a wheel? I mean, would their legs be...
Would be more prized, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, would that be...
No. I mean, you need to have some musculature there, so I mean, if it's just like this atrophied, kind of like essentially non-existent muscle, what you'd have is, and we do get this in some of the animals that we butcher, you have this abundance of fat, and then this tiny little... Like, for example, in some of the heritage breed pigs, when you have pork belly, which has a couple muscles going through the belly flap.
So
but
somebody got
a lot of fat. So you probably want to have maybe something more like the teenage girl that you're describing, something that does some exercise, but maybe not too much, but probably eats more like junk food.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Well, not necessarily junk food because you don't want synthetics. You probably want to have just like a good fatty, maybe cheeses. Eats a lot of cheese. That would be
great. Good Wisconsin gal.
Yeah, just like
some Badger fan in Big Ten country.
It's really good.
Watch out, Wisconsin.
The jerky.
Go Huskers.
Well, that's where Donald was from,
Husker girls, they eat that corn-fed beef.
That's right. Oh, my God.
Runs are fed girls.
Wow. Holy shit.
I love runs.
But, I mean, I think probably the best way to go would probably be the offal.
Oh, yeah.
And also just proportionally the weight-wise. I think it would make the most sense.
That's easier to put in jars and put in the fridge if you were going to do that.
Well, I'm sure that the James Baird Foundation would be very interested in a transcript of this show, Mr. Kulik.
Right.
Hey, you guys want to do the segments?
Yes.
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah, let's do the segments.
Let's say.
We can run through those. Otherwise, this is a long episode, so thanks for hanging with us, by the way. We're going to do segments right after this.
Hey guys, it's Kendall, the unpaid intern of the shows. Right now, the hosts are at Jerry's Bar at 6301 Military, right here in the Benton neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska. Rob, the owner, apparently has amazing drink specials, 19 beers on tap, premium spirits, and a cozy neighborhood atmosphere. Everybody is welcomed, except for me, because I can't drink. I have to sit home watching our cats. Thanks, Rob. Thanks. 68104 ever.
And now it's time for new screams. Oh, that was a scream? Sounds like a goat to me.
All right, yes, new screams. Do you guys watch anything new? Brian, you said you've been watching different...
I didn't watch it. I mean, specifically seek out this trailer, but we saw it at one of the movies we went to, The Gallows.
Insidious? Oh, that's right, Insidious 3.
And I saw a commercial for it the other day. It just kind of pissed me off.
They pissed you off?
Yeah, because they're trying to like set it up as, well, the story is about these kids that are
this got
breaking
Charlie
into their...
in it, right?
Charlie.
Yeah.
And so this commercial is already like, Jason has the machete, and which he has plenty of other shit too. But Jason has the machete, and Freddy Krueger has the fingers, and Charlie's got the noose. Like, this movie hasn't even come out yet, buddy.
Yeah,
I don't care.
They're making the icons for us without
thanks.
us making them icons.
Exactly.
And they got a whole thing going on. The kids are freaking out of this Ouija thing.
It's another found footage.
That's in that thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the thing in the thing.
Yeah,
Are you talking about the two pens?
The two pens thing that I haven't seen anything on, but I mean, my friend's a teacher. She's talking about it. The kids.
You haven't seen the two pencils thing?
No.
What?
It's a thing that's sweeping through
you guys
like middle school.
The pencil.
See,
you put the two pencils on top of each other.
It's like a Ouija
and you
board
ask it questions,
thing.
and it'll like
what?
And it's in the movie. Is the thing, and so we're thinking that's a social media campaign. This thing has been put out to the kids, and they're all doing this trick thing.
Summoning
and now
demons.
the movie's going to come out, and they contact this demon called Charlie or something like that.
Charlie, are you?
Yeah, they say Charlie, are you here or something like this.
That's totally part of the movie campaign. Yeah,
yeah.
It's
really
just
breaking
there's
news.
A bunch
right
of found footage of people like doing this. So you make you take two pencils, you put them in a cross shape, and then you write like yes, no, or
you make kind of like a Ouija board.
Basically, it's like the magic 8-ball.
Are you getting pissed? Zip's getting pissed.
Zips looks like he's
no.
he's about to get up.
You know what we're talking about though? Have you seen the videos?
I have not seen the videos of these.
Well, YouTube is just like blown up with videos of this.
And it's all related to this movie.
I'm guessing now.
They've been talking about it on Coast to Coast AM and stuff.
It came to me from people that work for me at one of the restaurants who were like, "Have you seen this? Oh my god!" And it's just like these supercuts of people freaking out when they ask like, Charlie, can you are you here? And it's like, oh, it's not doing anything. And then all of a sudden one of the pens will go and it'll move over.
So they're saying that.
So it's like Charlie.
Oh, really?
So this is the movie Gallows? Is that what you're talking about?
That's the movie that there's a scene where they do
out July
this.
10th.
And it's coming out.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And it also has...
I'll go see it, but...
It's one of those trailers, too, where they show that this is so scary. This is what the audience's reaction is.
Right.
And so they're
really?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So that just
probably
doesn't really...
jump scares.
Yeah.
That was like...
This is the jump scare with the cat, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? There was like Paranormal Activity, or there was one where the whole trailer was mostly me watching crowds freak out rather than anything that's in the movie. I can't remember which one it was. It sounds like that.
Good or bad. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, go check that out. If you hear about it, let us know what you think about the Gallows.
Gallows doesn't look great.
Yeah, not yet.
I'm predicting Panload for that one.
Let's go to Scream in the Dark.
So you like to watch scary movies on Hulu or Netflix? Well, now it's time for Scream in the Dark.
All right, streaming. Yeah, let me see. I actually have a couple of them, and I think that one of them was a Josh, actually, my other co-host for the D&D 5e podcast, mentioned that we should watch Homebound, which is now on. And I've been looking at it, and I had it in my queue, actually. And the cover does not tell anything about what's happening in the movie. And he just said, I'm not even going to tell you about it, but you need to watch it. Just watch it. And I did, and I love that. I'm pleasantly surprised. It was suspenseful, scary, amazing story. It's a film out of New Zealand. So those New Zealanders I think they make great horror movies. And if you ever saw, the Black Sheep, Babadook.
Oh, sure.
So this was on the same kind of thing. So it's a New Zealand film. Really, you're engaged in all the characters. It's worth a watch. It's got just a lot of suspense, but it's also scary, and you really don't know what's happening until the very end, and then it gives you a nice, good, beefy conclusion. So check it out. You won't know any of the actors if you're not if you're living in America. You may not realize some of these actors in there, but they're all fantastic. So yeah, Homebound was one.
And that was on Netflix,
That's
perhaps?
on Netflix. You can stream that.
Sounds like a Disney movie. Homebound,
yes. Well, the main character...
Will Terry the Turtle make it home?
Exactly.
Yeah. Homebound.
It's just like that.
No animals were harmed.
No.
Or all the animals were harmed.
No, this chick is a criminal, and she gets put on... what is that? Where you have the ankle bracelet. House arrest. Back at her house that she grew up at. Now, she seems a little older than what I think she was supposed to be, but she's living back with her parents, with her mom and her mom's new husband or husband that she's been with or whatnot. But anyway, so it revolves around that, and it revolves how shitty she is to her parents, but things start to happen around the house. And so you don't know what it is or who's doing it, or is it paranormal, is it not? So it's great, but it's way better than Poltergeist. Again, everything was way better than Poltergeist.
2015.
Yeah, 2015. So yeah, Homebound, go check it out on Netflix. And anybody else see any good horror?
I just want to say that going back to our earlier discussion, Manhunter is on Netflix, so check it out. If you disagree with Brian's take on it, you can write to me at brianisfullofshit at necronomicast.com / your mama.
Yeah.
That so that's on there. I also been watching a lot of shark movies. There's Sharknado, Sharknado 2, because in July, dear listeners, we're going to have kind of a Jaws retrospective of the 40th anniversary of Jaws. And,
which we just watched the other night.
Yeah, we just watched Jaws. I watched Jaws 2 on over Father's Day weekend. Watched Jaws 3. So we're going to be... So gear up, Shark Fiends. We're going to be doing the...
Mm-hmm.
So I've
Feeding
kind of
frenzy.
I've been kind of neglecting my duties on the Netflix, but I did check out Sharknado 1 and 2, and we'll talk about that at a later date.
Oh, yeah, please. I'm going to have to make it through that. I'm still making my way through Wolf
They're not
Cop.
as bad as Jaws the Revenge, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's I did make it through almost half of Wolf Cop now. I'm slowly going. I made it through the penis transformation. I had to make Lori watch.
And isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, it's great.
Wolfcock.
I had to say it, so I'm meandering my way through this horror movie. It's going to take me weeks.
You said cop with a P, right?
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I thought.
Only it wasn't really in that particular scene. I give it
the
to him.
The camera doesn't flinch.
Never does. I've never seen a wolf penis or a human penis transformation like that. It was awesome. So.
It's the movie of our dreams back in like when we were like 15. It's like if we could only make a movie like this.
But wait, let's show his dick and let's make that transform.
Oh, dude, that'd be so cool, man.
So sweet.
I'm intrigued.
I don't even think 15-year-old us is just like.
Yeah. We made a movie where the murderer was having relations with his mother.
Yeah, you guys were way worse than I was. I mean,
We alluded. It was very tastefully
I just wanted to kill people.
Oh, it was.
We ran over a kid with a VW Bug for our movie, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Then I was disappointed to learn that we had that the name was already taken, or whatever.
We ran over the new kids.
Lots of. I made
Paul
it
and I
through.
murdered the new kids on the block. It was Adam West.
You guys at least made a whole film.
film.
You guys finished your film. I just stabbed donuts and made it look like
when Paul
blood.
and I made films, my mom's like tomato soup cans would disappear because we needed blood.
Oh my god!
You know, I mean, we
had to be in winter so we could splatter
on the snow.
Yeah,
more soup.
Scanning the web for all the latest in horror news? Well, this just in. Horror News Slash right here.
Oh my god! All right, well that was news. That was actually Stream in the Dark. Do we have a Horror News Slash today?
I have.
Have some, right?
We broke the news that today, as we tape this today, Hannibal, the TV show, has been canceled, but they are going to play the entire third season, which they started 3 weeks ago. The Hollywood Reporter is reporting that the production company is actively seeking a new home for the show, so maybe it'll be part of our Stream in the Dark. I have one other tidbit of news. Dimension Films announced last week that the next Halloween film is going into production in July and tentatively titled Halloween Returns. It is directed by Marcus Dunstan, who's done some this will be his biggest movie to date, but it was written by him and Patrick Melton. They wrote Saw 4, 5, 6, and 7. Among some other things.
That blows my mind.
Oh, there's a million. So many. So the rumor has it that it's going to take place immediately after Halloween 2, 1981. The 1981 version that was directed by Rick Rosenthal.
It'll be a period. It'll take place in the.
It'll take place like one of
kind of like they're going to do.
What it is? What of the victims or somebody blah 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 from Halloween 2 back in 1981? Their kids. Mm-hmm. Somehow Michael Myers is on death row. Somehow he escapes, and it takes place with their children.
Oh,
somehow. So that's.
Do they eat them?
Well, he did eat the dog in part 1.
Yeah,
it's still warm.
Oh man.
So we got another Halloween. We're gonna have some slashers in 2016 with Friday the 13th being written by Nick Antosca. And Nick Antosca is a writer and producer for the Hannibal TV show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's writing the screenplay. So it's all... See, everything ties back to Friday the 13th with me.
It does.
It's all
like,
eternal here. The Alpha Omega is at Crystal Lake.
What does Jason eat?
Yeah.
You know, what do you think
he doesn't eat?
He just like crawfish on the bottom of the...
Yeah. That's it. Worms.
Clear Lake? What's the name
of it?
Maggots.
Crystal Lake.
Crystal Lake, yeah.
Crystal.
What's the name of the lake?
Sorry.
Oh my God, Brian's going to smack you.
I know. I would draw a big butt over that one.
I know. We're just supposed to episode
just keep your
butt.
4 feet on the 4 legs of your chair on the ground. Mrs. Freed will not be.
Well, hey, we are about out of time. This one might even make itself into a 2-part episode.
Hey.
Maybe I might do that. But hey, we did want to say once again we are going down to Crypticon in Kansas City.
Yay!
So we're gonna have a booth there. We're getting a table. Everybody's coming with, right? We're all gonna sleep in a tent out in the front yard of the.
I'll be
hotel.
sleeping in a van down by the river.
That's right. So we'll have prizes. Actually, we're gonna have a raffle. We're gonna have some prizes that you can get some fabulous prizes just by putting your name in the raffle. We're gonna do podcasting from there. We're gonna talk to some convention goers there. But yeah, Crypticon Kansas City in August. We are going to be there. You can even buy Necronomicast merch.
You can enter a contest to buy us a beer.
That's right.
Yay!
You win. And you win. And you win.
And we all win.
Everybody's a winner. Yes, that's a great contest.
Yeah, come check us out in Kansas City. Say hi. Listen to the show. And we'll be glad to meet you. It will be a lot of fun.
And we're also still planning Necronomicast pub quiz. Mm-hmm. So we are still. So if you have any trivia questions that we can't normally find, or you have something ingenious you want us to put on our Necronomicast pub quiz, email us at necronomicast@gmail.com. And check us out on all social media, Facebook, and all that good stuff. And tonight's show is sponsored by Le Bouillon. And no, I'm just kidding.
Do it.
I'm trying to find the French word for human skin, but that's not coming to me.
La peau humaine.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul. How do you say crispy human skin?
Yeah, right.
Come on.
Croustillant.
Oh, yes. That even sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good.
I know. It's tasty.
I'll have a little bit of that.
Oh, well, hey, Paul, thanks for being on the show.
Dude,
thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
It was a blast. It really was.
We've heard about a lot of your adventures with Brian, so.
No.
Oh, yeah. And you're welcome back anytime. Talk about horror.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, guys, that was our Hannibal show. And, I guess until next time, my name is Wayne.
This is Zip.
This is Brian.
You can go, Paul.
And this is Paul. This is Paul.
And this is Doug. Good night.
You've been listening to the Necronomicast, a weekly podcast produced by Wayne Brecky, part of the Free Life Media Network. For show notes and other information, go to necronomicast.com.